everyone, I'm Dr. Z. I'm a clinical psychologist specializing in transgender care. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about whether it is possible to convince yourself, to really convince your mind actually, that you do have gender dysphoria and that you are transgender. In other words, is it possible for your mind to delude you and to lead you to this conviction that you are transgender when in reality you're actually not. And I'm going to break down this video into two age groups. Today's video is going to be age 18 to 28, and the video that's going to be released next week is going to be age 28 and up. The reason why I'm breaking down into age categories is because I have observed that age matters very, very much when we're talking about this particular question. And as I'm going to be discussing in this video, you will see why. So if you fall into this category, stay tuned and watch it. If you don't, you're still welcome to watch. You still might learn something out of this. But if you fall in the category of 28 and up, stay tuned for the video next week. So let's talk about this idea, this question that actually a lot of you have been asking me, a lot of you who fall into younger age group. Remember, I don't work with children or teenagers, so we're talking about 18 up to 28. Have been asking me whether it's possible for you to play tricks, whether your mind is playing tricks on yourself, whether your mind is coming up with the scenarios, whether your mind is coming up with this idea of gender dysphoria, if perhaps your mind is overcompensating and coming up with this idea of you being transgender, all of those type of questions. And here's the thing. When we are 18 to 28, right, but actually when we're even before the 18, our brain still continues to develop. Our brain has a particular function. It's right here in front of our brain. It's called prefrontal cortex. It's part of the frontal lobe that is very much connected to executive function. And this part of the brain does not really fully develop until we're about 25 years old. And the reason why I make this video past 25 to age 28 is to give a little bit more legroom. But this part of the brain doesn't really fully develop until we're about age 25. Maybe for some people it might be a little bit later. But that's a part of the executive function of our cognition that is responsible for impulse control, short-term decision making. It is especially responsible for being able to see how your behavior, your actions are going to have, whether it's going to have, and what kind it might have consequences. So it's a very, very dynamic and a very important part of our mental functioning. And when we are young, this is why you actually see, for those of you who are in this age group watching this, or for those of you who are older and have kids who fall in the category 18 to 28, when you see those people in that group to go, for example, to a party and drink at a party and then get behind the wheel and drive, you always wonder, how can somebody who is 21, 22, 23 years old is still making such a stupid mistake as driving while intoxicated? Well, that's why. Because this part of the brain that is responsible for thinking how your behavior, how me driving drunk behind the wheel may have consequences, may actually get somebody killed, may actually mean that I will get pulled over, may actually mean that I will get in a car accident, and how that's further going to affect my life. So this part of the brain that is linking this chain of the events to see how something is going to unfold is not fully developed and therefore not there. That's why we see people in that age making some stupid, idiotic mistakes, and we can't understand why, because on the surface they look like they're high-functioning adults. So this is why this part is so important when it comes to gender dysphoria. So to answer the question, is it possible for age group 18 to 28 to convince your mind that you do have gender dysphoria and you are transgender? The answer is yes, absolutely. In fact, the mind is capable of convincing us of numerous type of things, not just only gender dysphoria. But here's the big difference. There is a group of people who fall into this age category who are certain, who know that they're part of the identity. They know at a core they're transgender. They may be fearful and worried about transitioning or taking any first steps, but at the core they know. And then there's the group, and that's the group I'm speaking to today, who are not sure, who are constantly questioning, who are really, really uncertain, who think it may be gender dysphoria, but not really quite convinced yet. That's the group that is much more susceptible to convincing themselves to convincing your mind that you may be transgender, when in reality you may be dealing with issues of gender expression and gender expression conflict within how you present yourself right now, issues with gender role confusion, even issues such as sexuality. Even though sexuality is not directly, of course, connected to gender identity, it is part of it. So it could be that you're just dealing with some of those issues, but because what happens when you're that young, right? You lack in also a lot of experiences. You lack in relationship experiences, intimacy experiences, life experiences. As a result, you don't have that much time navigating the world in your biological sex and the genders that you were assigned. So as a result, it makes it that much more difficult. Another thing that falls into this category is that when you're that young, what happens is you end up, and this is because you are in the category of current millennials, right? You're of the generation of internet. You are of the generation of social media and access to computers. You immediately go and you start Googling and you start looking and you start listening to narrative. And the more you listen and the more you get obsessed about listening to narrative, the more there's a possibility of a tendency to confuse how you hear somebody else's account, to confuse that it's very much parallels your current life, and to distort it and to believe that you may be transgender. Now again, I want to be super clear here. I am not talking about individuals who know, who's sure, who very confident, who's certain. I'm not talking about individuals who had gender dysphoria, that they have a long tracing history of, even dating all the way back to childhood. If you know, you know. And if you know, then you know that there's no way your mind would have confused you. But there are people, because of this part of the brain that has not been developed yet, it's hard to see how things are going to unfold. On top of lack of prefrontal cortex being developed, on top of that, social media, lack of experiences, lack of relationship, lack of living in a world and navigating the world also affects your relationship to gender. And that's where people can get really confused. And that's where people can start thinking that I am probably transgender. And the reason why people start thinking that they're probably transgender is because we're human beings. When we're confused, we want to know. When we're uncertain, we want to find out. And when you are uncertain, you start looking for what boxes are available for me out there. What are those boxes that I may fit in? Okay, so maybe I'm a transgender, maybe I'm non-binary, maybe I am genderqueer, maybe I'm this, maybe I'm that. So you're trying to look at the box and see how you may fit into the box versus really listening to yourself. So yes, it is absolutely possible during the time period to confuse and for your mind to go down this rabbit hole where after some time you kind of get to be pretty you start to think that you are transgender, when actually in reality you probably just maybe need to explore your gender expression, or like I said, your gender role or other aspects of your gender. And one of the things that I find telling when I work with individuals is at a point when you come to me and at a point when we're discussing your gender identity, how still confused you are. If you're still very uncertain, if you're still very afraid of transitioning or any kind of transition related steps, whether they're medical or social, doesn't really matter. But if you're still very uncertain, where you're telling me, I think my mind is telling me I'm transgender, I think I am, but I'm not sure, I'm still so confused. Being so confused is a telling sign. Being so confused can mean a lot of things. And that's something for you to investigate. But yes, during that particular age group, 18 to 28, it is possible because we're bombarded by so many things. It is possible to get obsessive about something. It is possible to get so obsessive about your gender and start seeing everything that you're experiencing as gender dysphoria, but maybe you're experiencing body dysmorphia, or maybe you're experiencing some other issues. If you are watching this and you're feeling really confused and you're actually thinking that your mind is convincing you, give yourself time to investigate. Maybe go see a therapist in your area and explore your feelings more. If you're watching this and you're in group 18 to 28 and you're sure you identify as transgender, gender non-binary, or genderqueer, or any other types of gender identities, then you know then go ahead and make whatever steps you need necessary to alleviate your dysphoria and to express yourself in a ways that you identify with. Again, like I said, I want to be very clear here, because this video is not intended to say is that because the prefrontal cortex is not really fully developed, that some people who are saying that they do know, in fact don't know. That is not true. Of course, if you know, you know. But if you are confused, again, confusion to me, it's like a yellow light, right? It's analogous to you driving a car, and instead of getting a green light saying go forward, it's just a yellow. It's basically saying pause. It's not a red sign. It's not a stop sign. It's a pause sign. It's a sign to investigate. And I think giving the transition is such a big endeavor and so costly and psychologically stressful and financially costly. I think everybody who contemplating gender transition owes it to themselves to really investigate and make sure that that's really truly what they want to do. So hopefully this video is going to be helpful. I think it's really, really important to think about those things, to think about how you feel, to ask yourself whether you feel a sense of certainty or whether you feel a sense of tremendous confusion, whether you are having a lot of anxieties about it, and if your mind especially going back and forth, well, then I would say, well, I wonder why it's going back and forth. And I know that it can be very difficult to make that decision. And that's why social transition is so instrumental, because without making any medical changes, it enables you to safely explore your gender a little bit more, to bend those gender norms, to bend your gender expression in any way you want, to see which one feels and sits much more closer to your core. So hopefully this video helps. Comment below, let me know if you are in this place where you're starting to think that your mind is making tricks. You're starting to think that your mind is coming up with this idea. And hopefully this gives you a little bit of clarity, a little bit of answer. So comment below, let me know. And for those of you who are older, stay tuned. That video is going to be released next week, and it's going to be dealt with, no longer dealt with prefrontal cortex, because that has been developed, but I'm going to bring up something else that may lead to the confusion. So hopefully this helps. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Bye.